No, let me know as soon as I'll go.
Not history. This is not reliving the past. This is exploring a kind of fun thing to do. Many Americans enjoy outdoor living. It is very rare that you will find any one person, and it sounds odd, but it's very rare that you'll find any one person who's an expert in all the 7 areas that we've listed. If you find a hunter or a fisherman, he may not be a good cook. Or if you find a hunter and a fisherman and a good cook, he may not like living in a tent. Or if you find a good tenter and hiker and camper, he may not like to fish or hunt, and so on. So we've gathered together people who are interested in outdoor living, but from different walks of life. About 100 years ago, in southern Africa, the English were busy fighting the Boers in a war called the Boer War. One of the generals leading the English was Baden-Powell, later knighted and became Lord Baden-Powell, but he was appalled at the English soldiers, the young men from England, who were going out there and they didn't have any idea of what to do. They didn't have any idea of how to live. They didn't know how to make a bed. They didn't know how to wash their clothes. They didn't know how to cook their meals. They couldn't do anything. They would deliver food and they wouldn't know how to cook it. And if they did cook it, they'd burn it and they'd ruin it, and they were ruining rations. And when he finished the war, he came back to England and he said, we have to do something about the youth of this nation. We have to teach them to survive. And it's no different today. Young men and young women are growing up with microwaves and 5 kinds of Wheaties, with or without raisins, that crunch. And left to their own devices, they don't know how to wash their clothes outdoors, and they don't know how to eat, and they don't know what to catch, and they don't know how to clean it. Believe it or not, the cruelty on animal society interfered with a bunch of scouts trying to pluck a chicken and gut it and roast it, because that was cruel and unusual punishment for that chicken. But that's how we get chickens. And most kids, most of you out here have never caught a chicken and killed it and gutted it and plucked it and cooked it. I mean, you get chickens from the store, right? Preferably in a box, frozen, and all you have to do is heat up in the microwave. But there is another way. And with this series, I want to introduce you to a series of men who are going to teach you about something that they love, and that's outdoor living. We couldn't cover everything, so we picked some of the major areas that we thought would be fun. The major thing we want to do in this whole series is to have fun, and to teach you to have fun. I've had people call me on the phone and say, gee, I know this and I know that, could I come and can I bring this? And we said, sure. A young woman called me and said, I've spent the entire fall collecting mushrooms and sassafras roots. Can I make some sassafras tea at your cooking session? And I said, sure. We'll have the sassafras tea along with everything else. So Judge McGraw doesn't like sassafras tea. He's making terrible faces. But with no further ado, I want you to meet the first 2 people who are probably the best all-around camping people I know. Walt Teach has lived in Rensselaer forever and was scoutmaster of Troop 152 for how many years, Walt?
28.
28 years. Figure 50 boys a year. Walt's probably taught 1,000 boys how to camp. His successor, Mark Querry, has been with the troop
8 years.
8 years. Mark himself is an Eagle Scout, and he started young. He's been camping and cooking and hiking, and he and Fuzco and I could probably teach all 7 of these courses. But we're going to start out with them, and they're going to tell us about how you go camping.
We'll let you get through first.
You let me get through. All right, here I go.
Thank you, Dr. Ahler. First of all, I want to hand out the agenda sheet that we've made up for this particular course. If you run out, just pass them across for me, please. And make sure everybody gets one. I've got some extras here. And also, I've made some lists of some of the stuff we're going to go through tonight, so you'll have something to take back with you to go through, maybe if you're interested in starting some camping. It's a nice list to start with. Gives you all the basic essentials that we'll be going through tonight. You have extra? Oh, you don't have enough? Okay. Now, we're going to start out tonight with everything you do. You normally end up with rules that you have to follow. And there's one basic rule that applies all the time. Could anybody happen to think what that one basic rule would be that you would have actually for about anything you did? Sorry?
You have to plan.
Yeah, you have a plan, but
Clean up after yourself.
yeah,
Have fun.
have fun. Well, they're all close. The big one we go by is be prepared. And if you keep that in mind every time you want to go camping or anything you do, you'll end up having a good time. Now also, what I brought along, I like to collect reading material that goes along with this and places where I can get my equipment. But I found I was surfing the internet the other night, trying to find some little tidbits maybe I didn't know about. And fortunately I didn't, so that tells me I at least knew something about what I was going to talk about. But I went into my backpacker website and found out that they had people that had asked questions on basic camping. So I decided to get the answers and pull them up, see what other people had to say about it. And lo and behold, half of the answers mentioned the Boy Scout Handbook as a good basic tool for camping. And they can be purchased at Penny's or through the Scout Service Center. I mean, everything you want to know about how to camp is in that book. Also, there's a supplement to it called the Field Book, which is a little more detailed. And I use it a lot for, they give an example in here on winter camping that I tried at one time. I had a group of scouts over at Camp Caney. We built rustic shelters, and I decided since we had about 6 inches of snow, I'd just dig out the snow and do just like they said in the handbook. So I dug out the snow, put down a layer of newspaper, put the ground cloth down, and being the old man I am, I decided to put down an air mattress, put my sleeping bag in, and then wrapped it up in the ground cloth, the plastic cloth, so the whole thing was wrapped up. And that night it got down to 5 below. And I slept from about 10:30 to 4:30 and never woke up once. And it was totally warm. I woke up 4:30 thinking about how cold it was and if my boys were okay. So I went around then after that, checking their rustic shelters. And you always wonder sometimes if you tell the boys that they can do it and how to do it if they're going to do it. And probably that night, the 8 boys I had, every one of them slept through the night and did fine at 5 below 0. So they were just tickled to death. Plus in Scouts, you get a little award, you get freeze out patches, and then the honor is to get the below 0 patch you get with it. Also found a Wilderness Survival and Survival Skills book. That's real rustic. They show you how to start out by tanning deer hide. You know how to, after you shot your deer, how to gut it and take the hide off of it, and the process You can tan a deer hide in about 8.5 hours, according to this. And then they make all the primitive tools. And they show how to make those, how to cook, how to put mud on a chicken and throw it in the fire and bake it. And no modern tools whatsoever in this one. And this one, we found out that is no longer in print, but we're trying to find some more, is survives safely anywhere. And it's really a highly detailed scout manual. It tells you what happens if you're in any type of situation out in the wilderness and how you can survive. And it's an excellent book. These books we'll leave up here if anybody wants to come up afterwards and go through them and get the author's name, and maybe there would be an address in here you can get off of. Feel free. And this is just an example. I do most of my shopping through Campmore. And it's a discount camping catalog that I'll leave up here that you can look at. It has everything you could ever think of to purchase to go camping. You can take a lifetime just trying to find neat little equipment that works for you when you're out camping. But tonight we're going to stick with the basics and show you just what it takes to take that one day camping trip, an overnighter or a weekend, and then we'll also have a few things where we've done some long-term camping we'll talk to you about. So this time I'm going to let Walt say a few things.
Well, basically, you've got to have the right frame of mind before you even start camping. If you go to with the idea you're not going to like it, you're not. So the whole thing is to have a positive attitude, and like Mark says, be prepared. If you don't, if you come into it with a outlook that you're not going to have fun anyway, you won't, and neither anybody that you're with will have a good time either. So the only thing I can say is to go into it with a good frame of mind.
Walt, thank you. You're great on this here.
Right.
Also, at any time, if you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt us. We like to have that little interaction. It helps us move along also. And if our fire gets too smoky, we'll turn it off.
Don't stand too close to it.
Yeah, don't stand too close, especially when you're winter camping and you want to warm up your backside and you find out that you can't feel it till the back of your pants are on fire. I had one scout do that to me at one time. So now you're going to plan your camping trip. You have to plan where to go. Our suggestion is, if you've never camped before, grab a few items, your sleeping bag and a ground cloth and a blanket and your pillow, and just go outside and camp in the backyard for one night. Just to get familiar with some of the noises that you might hear at night. And I know even around Rensselaer with the river going down through it, you might even have a raccoon come up and get through somebody's garbage can. Believe me, you hear all that stuff when you're out camping. So the first thing I would actually try would just do that backyard camp, just see if you like it. That'll tell you if you want to make that next step. Then, once you figured out, yeah, I'd like to go ahead and maybe take a weekend and go somewhere, there's just oodles of places to go in Indiana. There's actually here in Rensselaer, there's a private Camp Carnegie, where if you let Walt and I know, we can let you in, get you set up. There's latrines and potable water. And we thought about inviting you out if anybody wanted to in March or April to try a camping experience. Got plenty of tents and places to set up. So, but as always in private property, you want to ask first and get permission. There's private campgrounds in the area. There's several around Rensselaer that you can go to that have all the facilities that you'd want, showers and restrooms and a pond or a little lake that you can go to. Then you could, places I love to take my boys and my family also are state parks. State parks have a lot of stuff for you to do. Trails for hiking, nature centers. Some of the nature centers in these state parks are just fantastic. And they'll have biologists there to explain everything you want to know. They take all your questions. You can do, some of them have planetariums where you can do a little strongman. Then you can work your way up to wherever you want to go. Then it's wide open. All our national parks and just other areas of the country. You travel across the United States, you always find campgrounds somewhere along the major interstates. What you want to look for, though, when you go to these places are, do they have potable water, which means drinking water, that you can cook with, wash up with, and also will they let you have fires. Sometimes, if you're backpacking in some of the national forests, they don't want you to have a campfire. They want you, Walt will get into this later on the no trace, low impact type camping. Maybe it's just too dry and they don't want you to have a fire. And also, one of the most important things I found, oops, I fell into a fire, is your group size. If you go anywhere anymore, it seems like, they want you to keep your group small. I was at the Boundary Waters this past June, and you can't have over 9 people in your group because of the impact to the environment and noise levels, especially if you're taking 8 boys up there, you have a pretty good noise level going. And then they limit the total number of people you can let into an area in a year's time. So you want to keep that in mind. And also, what do you want to do? Do you want to backpack, just hike, just go see nature, just sit around and try your regular camp skills around the campfire, or mountain climbing, whitewater rafting? You need to know what you want to do, plan what you want to do to go to an area that provides that for you. And you want to look at the weather, because that will determine if you even go, and if you do, what you need to take with you. Then make your travel plans. Find out the cost of what it'll be. Sometimes there may not be a hidden cost, but you may not be aware of it. Do you have anything to identify?
Nothing, fine.
Oh, okay. Now, we've got all this gear set up. All this that you see really isn't all necessary. We brought several examples of actually the same kind of thing. We have several backpacks and stoves and whatnot we're going to show you tonight. But on your list, we're going to go through your basic outdoor essentials.
I told Mark I was going to say something in the introduction that I didn't say, and perhaps he left it out because I told him I was going to say it. But he kind of inferred it. There's all kind of camping. There's just all kinds. Camping and outdoor living can be a walk to a park. It can be a walk through a park. It can be a walk through a desert. It can be a walk through a jungle. It can be anything. So what you bring depends so much, like he said, on where you're going, what you're going to do, and what you want to do while you're there. It's amazing to see the young kids turn out for their first camping trip. I told them I was going to bring a pack sack with an air conditioner, 3 folding tents, couple folding chairs, a pillow, and maybe a portable stove of some sort in here tonight, and say I'm ready to go on my camping trip. Excuse me.
Yeah, your bag of donuts.
My bag of donuts for a
That's
meal,
your
yeah.
food for the whole weekend.
Food for the weekend, a dozen donuts.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I've made a list of personal essentials that you should have all the time. Definitely want to have a pocket knife. That has so many uses that I don't really want to start into it. And actually, you want it as sharp as you can possibly get it. As you can see by that walking stick, I do quite a bit of wood carving while I'm just messing around, sitting around the campsite. And when I do that, my scouts want to start. Well, I keep telling them to get their knives as sharp as possible, because if they do cut themselves, it's a nice clean wound. And they invariably do. Because I've seen them struggling real hard with a dull one and make a real nasty gouge. And I'd rather have a nice clean cut than a real nasty gouge. But pocket knife is definitely essential. Also, you want to keep with you a small first aid kit. And hopefully, you've had some type of first aid training. There's situations we found where you can't get somewhere for a whole day. Say you even went for a 5-mile hike somewhere in a state park. You're 2 or 3 hours to getting somewhere. So always have a small first aid kit with you and some first aid knowledge, because it's hard to crawl back 5 miles with a real bad sprained ankle. And you want some extra clothing. We'll go through some of that here in a little bit, some of the clothing you need to take, and the rain gear. But you want a canteen. Walt has a canteen he'll show you, or just a simple water bottle that you can stick in your pocket. Especially on those nice hot days where you just want a refreshing drink and you really hate to drink out of that stream that's right next to you because you don't know what's been in it. And definitely flashlight. And I didn't bring trail food. Trail food can be your own mix. A lot of granola bars, a lot of the trail mix we like to use is like a mixture of raisins, peanuts, and M&Ms all in a baggie. You just mix them up and easily throw it in your pocket. If you want to munch, you can go ahead and do that. And I always keep a little bag of matches and a little sealed tube of fire starter with me. That you never know when you might get caught out and need to build a fire. It's a real handy item to have. I use the Strike Anywhere matches. Yes.
What is fire starter?
It could be dryer land. Little pieces of kindling, which is little sticks of wood. The matches, once they're burnt, save those and use those to start a fire with. The dryer lamp too, you can use if you have a magnifying glass and you don't have any matches. You can start a fire with using that, getting it to smolder by using the sun. And then definitely sun protector. Now, I even take this along during the winter. But if you've ever been out in the sun in a real bright sunny day with the sun reflecting off the snow, you see these guys that have climbed, Mount Everest. They got this great big white gooey stuff all over their nose because they just burnt the daylights out of it. And even up at those altitudes, with the sun, I always take a little bit of sun shield, and also it's a good skin protector against the wind. You get that worked in, and or Vaseline works real well. And then map and compass. Map is where you're going. Sometimes it might be if you've gone to the state park, it's just a map showing all the trail markers. And we have been at state parks and got on trail and didn't pay any attention, got turned around, didn't know which direction we were going. Then it was overcast, and I always carry my compass, so I just did a quick compass check and knew which direction on that trail we were going, so I knew primarily where we were. And this is maps that if you ever go to the boundary waters that they give you, and actually they're so detailed that we really hardly used our compass at all. But this was our high adventure trek, the red dotted line that we did 50 miles in 6 days. We'll talk about that here in a little while. Now, we got all your basic essentials, all the stuff you're supposed to keep in your own little backpack. A lot of this stuff I keep in there all the time. I never take it out. Now, you're going to run into, in one combination or other, 2 types of weather. It's either going to be warm or cold. And there's those seasons, spring and fall, where you're going to run into both. So that's why I said before, watch your weather. It's going to be warm or cold and rainy or snowy. You can run into about all of them all in the same day. So I've tried to prepare here some of the gear that we need to go through. Most of this stuff will fit into a backpack about this size. This may not be in order, but I have a pair of camp shoes that I would take along with me. Now, the shoes I've got on, my waffle stompers, those would be the ones that you'd wear out hiking around. But you always take that extra pair of loafers, moccasins, whatever you have with you, to change into around the camp. Your feet might be sore, and maybe you even rubbed a couple blisters on them from your hiking boots. So you want to get into something a little more comfortable, so you take those along. And you always take a towel and washcloth. And, you know, just, this is normally for a weekend camp out. You know, you want a couple pair of pants, short sleeve shirt, and a sweater, just for those chilly evenings. And of course, as Walt's going to point out later, there's a certain way to really pack all this stuff, and they won't go through that. The good old essentials, extra underwear and socks. And depending on the weather is how you want to pack this. This is just for a nice, decent weekend. Now, if it looks like it's going to be rainy, throw in some extra. You're always better off to take that little bit of extra and be dry than to be sitting around in wet, damp clothing. We're trying to get it all dried out around the fire, which will take away from the rest of your activities you have. And I always like to take with me a hat that's got a brim all the way around it. That way then, when you're out messing around, you can keep it off the back of your neck. Because there's a lot of times where you'll be walking one direction and you don't think much about it. You got your eyes shaded, but the back of your neck will just burn like crazy. So I try to keep a hat that I can get protection pretty well all the way around. And then, if you've lost your hat, and you want to keep the sun off those bald spots for you guys on top of your head, my kids like this one. We take our bandanas, and we tie knots in all four corners, and we wear that around. And it will keep you from burning. Sometimes they get a little hot, but it'll work out pretty well. Or you guys can tie it up the way you like it. Now, for cold weather camping, what you want to do is always remember to dress in layers. All the way down from, your underwear to your pants to all your sweatshirts and jackets and all that you might have on. Because if you get warm, you can take it off, and if you get cold, you can put it back on. And one thing you want to keep from doing is sweating. Because once you've started to do that, it tends to make you chill. And once you've chilled, then you're primarily about done. It can make it pretty miserable out camping. I brought this backpack, and I'll explain the differences in these here in a little bit, if I can get into it. So for cold weather, well, for actually any type, there's my rain jacket. Always keep one of those. I always throw one in my packs, and I've got it there all the time. And you can buy them real cheap. You can buy the disposable one, or I call them disposables, but you can get them like at Walmart for $1. They're in a little packet, and buy $5 worth of them, 5 of them. Throw a couple in your pack, throw a couple in your car, and they're handy. Also, a garbage sack works nice, just in case. You can poke holes in the side of it and one in the top, and put it over you. At least you got your main body covered up. And that works real well. It's not on your list, but I like to take a wool blanket. And with wool, can anybody explain to me why you'd want to take wool out camping with you?
Because it smells so good when it gets wet?
Yeah, it smells good when it gets wet.
Wonderful against bare skin.
Yeah. Yeah, make sure you got your long underwear on before you put on a wool shirt or pants. But wool, if you get it wet, will still keep you warm. It will still trap your body heat for you. It won't work as well as if it's dry, but it sure works better than anything that's wet and it's cotton. Because cotton will wick off so fast, it cools you down that you really chill if you get anything cotton wet. But wool, that's why sheep like it. They get wet and they're still warm. And I always carry a couple of flannel shirts. Also carry just a regular shirt in case it's that cool morning and you don't want to wear your nice hot flannel shirt around when it gets to be 60 degrees because you might be out hiking and working up a good sweat. And nice light shirt, change into that and do your hiking with that. I carry a couple pair of pants. Oh, those were the shorts from the summer, the warm one. But I have a pair of wool that I couldn't find, and I yelled to wife, which didn't make her happy. But I also then have a pair of insulated blue jeans that I take along with me, along with my wool pants. And of course then the regular, you know, your regular underwear and socks. Oh, I think I found another 10. Oh no, long underwear. You want to take those along with you. And I always take 2 or 3 pair, even on a weekend camp out. Wear one while I'm out messing around, then change into another pair before I go to bed. And of course, if I can get rid of this now, you want a nice wool hat. Now, a wool sock hat, they always told me, and I didn't believe it for a long time, that if you're not wearing a hat and your feet get cold, put a hat on, because it'll warm your feet up. But when I'm winter camping, and like on a night like tonight, with snow on the ground, and it's going to get a little chilly, I go on a camp out, I'll put it on, I'll never take it off. You wear it to bed, because anywhere from 50 to 75% of your body heat goes out the top of your head, even when you're laying down in your sleeping bag. So I found, because you don't want to get down in your sleeping bag and breathe into it, because the moisture that comes off your breath will condensate inside your sleeping bag and it'll get wet. And if you're out there and it's 10 degrees or so, it'll freeze all the way around your sleeping bag. At one time we used some dome tents, small ones, and I and the other assistant got into it. And every morning we got up, the whole inside of the dome tent was frosted. And by afternoon it would melt and drip down. Well, we got rid of those tents. But that was just from our breathing inside that tent. In a small confined area, and it just condensated, and the whole inside you could scrape it with your fingernails. But you want to wear one of those. And I will not let a scout go on a camp out unless he has a pair of these on. Because what they do wear just doesn't work. But a nice pair of insulated boots. Most of them have the rubber bottom areas to them with leather uppers. Some of them are full rubber, some of them have nylon. But I always like to make sure they got a nice liner on the inside of it. These can be taken out and removed. I've wore these to bed before to keep my feet warm when it's real cold. Just take them out of my boots and put on a pair of dry socks and put these on, and it'll keep your feet real toasty. But they're replaceable, so if you wear them out, it's no problem. And that primarily should take your cold weather. Cold weather is the one where I really think about when I'm going on. Like on a night like tonight, I'm comfortable with an insulated shirt. This is another insulated shirt and a vest. And I'll be fine tonight as long as it doesn't get too far below 20. But one of my assistants just hates me. He's cold all the time. And a lot of time I'll just sleep my underwear in my sleeping bag. And it'll get down to 5, 10 degrees. And be very comfortable. But it irritates him. But I also take along my my good insulated jacket. You want a good pair of insulated gloves or mittens. There's some real nice brands on the market, and you can get them real reasonable. You know, a pair for 10, 20 bucks, Gore-Tex or some other insulated gloves. I prefer gloves where I've got movement of my fingers. Mittens, you know, it's sometimes it's hard to grasp the stuff I want to. So I just use those type gloves. But a nice hooded, insulated coat, and layers of clothes underneath it will take care of you on a good cold winter night. Now, we're done with the stuff that you're going to pack up now in your backpack. This is all your own personal items. Next, we're going to go with how are you going to sleep and transport your equipment. So on your personal overnight camping gears, you want to go back to your outdoor essentials sheet. You'll want to take that with you. The clothing for the season and packs. Now, as I said before, I brought, we have 3 different types of packs. Why don't you go ahead and throw them in on your wall.
The rucksack. Old Army issue, and they're using quite a bit in Europe. They are backpacking specialists over there. This I use just mostly for a 1 or 2 day trail pack. And the sleeping bag I keep inside the bag. I have an air mattress, and what Mark was referring to before, I keep my separate clothes in bags. You have a pack full of bags. I have a poncho, easy to get through here. The good thing about the rucksack is all the pockets. You got a first aid kit, you got a rope and pliers, and you got a thermos or a canteen, and a camp shovel. Now that shovel is extra weight, but it sure comes in handy at times. It's a good sanitary tool also. But as far as backpacking, I think I'd stick with the rucksack.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Paul. Now on these others, if I can get it out of here. These I like to tell my scouts to purchase. You can get one of these for $80. It's an external frame backpack, and it's similar to Walt's, only it does have a frame. You want to make sure you get nice padded straps. And to me, when I was a boy in Scouts, we had to kind of makeshift our own hip belts. But a hip belt will take most of the weight of your pack and ride it on your hips instead of your shoulders. And it sure saves my shoulders a lot when they came out with these. So you want to make sure it's got the hip belt and the 2 shoulder straps. And there's a large compartment for your main clothes, food, and of course all your pockets around here, just gobs of pockets. The packs I look for, once I really started getting into it several years ago, was one I like to have around 3,500 to 5,500 cubic inches. A lot of times when you go to buy a pack, they'll tell you how many cubic inches are in that pack. I like to have one big enough to worry about the worst situation, which would be a nice cold winter camping trip. This next pack is primarily the same thing. It has the nice padded shoulder straps. This one has a chest strap to help bring it in snug around you, and a nice hip belt, but it's also got a butt pad on the back of it to keep it right off your butt bone, because that can dig in. But the frame on these are just, there's 2 stays right here, and that's the only thing that holds this pack on your back. And it's all reinforced across the top nice, but it's got a compartment up the top, and it's pretty deep. You can put a lot of stuff down in there. Normally you stuff your sleeping bags down in the bottom, but that's where I carry some extra clothes, and I'll just put a strap my sleeping bag onto it. But there's gobs of pockets on these for just about anything. The only thing I ever get confused on is which pocket did I put what? And I'm always digging through it, trying to find out where I was.
Did you say on that that you use the sleeping bag area for clothes and then you still manage to attach a sleeping bag?
Yeah, I buy extra straps for them. You can buy the extra straps. There's all kinds of areas on these packs that you can attach stuff on. Here's some extra loops. But I usually run them, there's a place through here where you just find places to put your straps strapped around your sleeping bag. But one thing you want to look for too, there's different ways to pack all three of these packs to help distribute your weight. On the internal frame pack, you want most of the heavy weight up against your back and all the light stuff to the outside. On the external frames, it's not that big a deal, but you want to still try to put most of your heavy weight on the top and your lighter stuff on the bottom. And sleeping bags. Now, what I brought are two different sleeping bags. I just wanted to show you the size I use. There's a big difference. This is my summer weight bag. And actually it'll go down to 30 degrees, but I don't think it's quite that comfortable for 30. But I try to get something, if you're going to get an all-around sleeping bag, I would get one that goes down 30 degrees. You can use it in the summer and the winter. You just have to wear or bring extra blankets for the winter. But you can, one of those. And then here's my winter sleeping bag. Now, I buy these. This is a zero bag. It's a 5-pound fill. And this is one I slept in at 5 below zero and slept real comfortable. Actually, this is an open cell mat in it because it'll, you can tell if they're open cell and closed cell. Open cells will absorb water. I cheat a lot of times and I'll take a cot with me, so it doesn't matter if I'm up off the ground, so I don't care. And but I do have a couple closed cell that if we ever backpacked into an area in the winter that I'd lay it down. Closed cell still gives you a little comfort, yet won't absorb water. And that'll keep it off your sleeping bag. But I also buy oversized bags because I may want to put on several layers of clothes before I go to bed. And you really want to look at what you're wearing before you go to bed. It makes a big difference. If you've been out hiking all day and your feet are sweating your boots, and you just take everything off and put on your sleeping bag, your feet and socks are still going to be damp. So what I do is I totally change all my clothes and put on fresh underwear, long underwear, the whole works. Because there's nothing more miserable than having cold feet, and you'll have them all night if you do it when it's cold out with wet socks on.
So sleeping bags are sold by pounds of fill, right?
Yes.
And types of fill.
And
Right,
types
right.
of fill.
Right.
So a sleeping bag is not a sleeping bag, is not a sleeping bag. There's all kinds of sleeping bags.
Yeah. Because I've had boys show up for a camp out with snow on the ground with 2 of those sacks you throw down in the living room to call as snuggle sacks. And go, no, you go home, you get something that'll work. And, you know, they think, well, I got 2 sleeping bags. My requirements for the boys are 2 sleeping bags or a sleeping bag and 3 blankets. Anytime we do any kind of winter camp, you put 1 sleeping bag inside the other one. Because the reason I tell them that, most homes have 2 or 3 regular sleeping bags that'll take them to 30 degrees. And you put one inside the other one, you've really insulated yourself good. You've even made a little air pocket in there. Because the zero bags, you get down to 10 degrees to minus 20 degrees on a sleeping bag, you can spend anywhere from $100 to $150. And a lot of boys can't come up with that kind of stuff.
But it also helps when you do have somebody show up with only 2 flimsy sleeping bags, by you put them together and put both boys in the same bag.
Yeah.
And you find out who really keeps them warm.
Because we tell the boys too, you know, if we're out, and you know boys, and if they see a frozen pond, they want to get on it. So we teach him what would happen if you fell through the ice in a pond. You know, you drag the boy out, you get his clothes off, you get him close to a fire, try to warm him up, and if you can't, you gotta go for help. Well, here he is, more or less naked, and we tell them, you have to do the same and get right in the sleep bag with them, warm them up. And oh, they just, whew, they cringe at that.
Unless it's their idea.
Yeah, unless they're the ones that are wet and freezing and ready to die. But here's the other air mattress I like to take with me. They're nice. There's some nice stuff on the market now. This is a self-inflating air mattress. And it's nice because you don't have to sit there and blow on a little tube for half an hour trying to get your air mattress out. And it does do it thick enough. You just have a valve that you open up, and you can hear the air rushing in. It's got a foam pad in it that when you've got it all squished up, it throws all the air out. When it starts to expand, it draws air in with it. But that'll get out. It'll be an inch or so thick, and it sure beats laying right on the ground with a rock right underneath your back.
And you don't puncture it in the middle of the night like an air mattress.
Right. Because one of the things you want to do when you're out camping too is look at your campsite. You know, where you're going to camp and how you're going to set it up. There's at Camp Buffalo with father-son camp out. Dad had it all figured out where he's going to camp. He picked a nice spot. Pine needles underneath him and had everything set up, and he thought he was going to have a great night's sleep. He woke up next morning and said, this is the worst experience of my life. A mole had decided during the night to do all his digging right underneath his sleeping bag. So all night it was this mole working up underneath his back and wherever he moved. So needless to say, he got up and moved his tent over to another spot. And a ground cloth. Ground cloths, when you're tent camping, you definitely want to put a ground cloth under your tent. You noticed this tent and most tents sold today have floors in it. Well, that really won't protect you totally, and it won't protect your tent. I've had several boys put up tents, not put a ground cloth down, and put the stick up through the bottom of their tent. And there you've taken a $140 tent and poked a hole in it already. And also, it helps to keep it clean. When you get up the next morning, you're going to pack it all up, and you pull it off your ground cloth, the bottom of your tent's going to be nice and clean, and it's less work trying to get it cleaned up to be folded. And then all you have to do is worry about your old piece of plastic ground cloth. And it doesn't take much of ground cloth. Take 2 or 3 of these with you. A lot of time, I won't put much gear in my tent. I'll leave it outside and I'll throw a ground cloth over the top of it. Same way with your firewood. When you're out, even on a nice summer day, you wake up in the morning and it's dewy out, the wood that you've had stacked up will still want to try to draw the moisture from around the surrounding area, off the grass or whatever you got it stacked on. Or dew will form over the top of it. You just put a ground cloth over it, wrap it in it, and it'll keep it drier, be a little easier to burn. Now, your eating kit. Walt, you want to show them your one-man personal kit?
For individual camping, you have the old Girl Scout and Boy Scout troop kit, a frying pan.
That's not hot off the fire, is it?
No.
Okay. Go, he's tough.
This is a regular little pot. This folds down into a nice complete unit that you can stick inside your pack. They're not that expensive. They're just lightweight. It won't crack if you get anything too hot in it or too cold in it. But it's supposed to close down pretty good. But for an individual camping by himself, this will cook anything you can take with you. And like I said, it's real good to carry because it's not much very tall. And then you have your utensils.
And I just brought a little variation of that. I've used this when I took a week-long trip down the Current River in Missouri with scouts. And of course, you know, I was surprised when Walt drug his out. He had the same thing all set up in his. You always keep your silverware with your cook kit. They've got some nice stuff on the market. They've got the Boy Scout, Girl Scout type. They're reasonable. You can buy those for $10 normally. You want to get a little more expensive and a little, to me, a little easier to clean up. This had Teflon coating in it. So I said, I gotta have that one. Because I get tired of really scrubbing out. You ever burn something in aluminum, you know what I mean. But it comes with, that's the frying pan that you use. Then you have another pot that's with it. And I swipe my 2 cups out of here to put in my cook kit, show you that later. But they all come with a nice little gripper. They run in front of the fire, you know, you can pull it off the fire or use it on your frying pan. And you get a couple plates. So you got 2 bowls to work with, 2 plates, 2 cups, your tongs, the lid, and then they go all nicely snugly into their little stuff sack that you get with it. Then you get a little expensive on these, you know, all the way at 20, 30 bucks. And this is considered a 2-man. And then your cleanup kit. This is your own personal cleanup kit. It's the same thing you would have that you run through real quick in the morning before you're off to school or work or whatever. You know, your soap and your toothbrush, your toothpaste, dental floss, a comb, your washcloth, and a towel. A lot of times you'll want to keep this all in, like Walt showed you, the bags. Just keep them all in there, you know that's all your toiletries. And then personal extras. When I went through this, the first one they mentioned was a watch as optional extras. I thought, man, I always wear a watch. But I have an assistant who never wears a watch. And I was going to have him take a group of boys out in one direction, I was going to go the next, and I said, we'll meet back then. He goes, well, does anybody have a watch I can borrow? And I was ready to kill him, because I always tell my boys they can't go anywhere unless they have one. And here's an assistant telling me that he doesn't wear one. So some of the extras you can have, that there's your watch, camera and film. There's always something interesting going on in your camp. I've never had a dull camp out. Or you want to go ahead and record what you've done in pictures, and for what you've got planned to do. If you're going to check out the wildlife, or fishing, you always want a picture of that catch you had, so people back home won't call you liars. Notebook and pencil. Sometimes you want to jot down notes of things that work and things that didn't work. Places of, make a list. I keep a notebook of places that we really enjoy camping and what they have. Definitely take some insect repellent, sunglasses. I always have a magnifying glass. It's for, you can use it for observing. Also then I said, we played around with 4-star fires with it. Binoculars, your bird and plant identification books, musical instrument. I've seen a lot when I've been out camping, somebody has a harmonica and starts playing harmonica, or they brought their guitar. And there's a lot of neat campfire songs you can learn while you're out there, or make up your own. Swimsuit, and I added at the bottom, the last one, your prayer book or Bible. There's no better place to commune with your God than sitting out on a stump in the middle of the woods, meditating. If you ever get the chance to go to a state park and go to an outdoor service, there's just something different about it that you won't find anywhere else. And I'd recommend it. Now let's look at the rest of your overnight camping equipment. You're going to need your tent. A tent can be no more than a ground cloth draped between 2 trees and staked down at the corners and something you crawl into. That can be your tent. Use another ground cloth to lay on and you're all set to go. Or you can get into, these are real handy. These are called 4-man tents. And the way they gauge tents in is how many people you can cram in there, and that's all you can. You can cram 4 people in there, but no gear or anything else. So we always divide it right in half. So if you see a tent that says 6-man tent, oh yeah, I've got 5 people, that fit nice. Well, it's only going to fit 3 people comfortably with all their gear. So keep that in mind when you go to look for a tent. The things I really look for in a tent, I found through the years, just through experimenting. I read a study through my backpacker that said a tent will last a full year. That's if it's up every day. So you figure if you're going to go camping 1 weekend a year, you've got what? It's probably good for 180 years. So you'll never wear that tent out. But if you have, if you do a lot though, you can wear them out. There are some good tents on the market. The Scout catalog sells a real good tent. We use a lot of those. Found Eureka probably to be the best outside brand, outside of scouting stuff. Kelty makes a real good tent. And I'm sure there's probably others, but these are the ones I found. The reason I like them is, you can see here it's an A-frame construction. It sheds water real well. Nothing worse than being set up your camp Saturday morning, get up and it starts raining and it doesn't quit till you go home Sunday. And you can survive in that and have a good time, but you don't want your tent or any of the stuff inside of it to get wet. The thing I like about them is you can see the rain fly on here. It goes almost all the way down to the bottom. I had a couple scouts that they got a tent for Christmas, nice stone tent, and at the top of it was a little rain fly that looked like a mini umbrella, and it covered maybe 10% of the whole tent. Well, we took it camping, they set it up, and we had a driving rainstorm that night. And all the boys that were in these tents did fine. Not a drop of water in it. But that dome tent, and it being nylon, it just sieved right through that dome tent. And they were just as wet inside as if they'd been out. So always keep that in mind. You want to keep something that will take you right down and cover 90% of your tent.
What's the material in that tent?
Most of it's, well, they call it, I believe, taffeta nylon. It's a nylon, but the rain flies, they're impregnated with waterproof, and they'll last a long time. They're real good tent. The wife and I do quite a bit of our own camping, and this is the only brand we're buying anymore because it works so well. And the better brand of tent you got, the better it'll last you and work for you.
Time to take a break.
Ready for a break?
Okay.
Back to our tents again. We're not going to go into too much detail. Hopefully you'll come back for one where we do outdoor shelters, and we'll get a little bit more into the types of tentage that you use for all different types of situations. One of the things you want to take with you is a dining fly. And actually, this is just a 9x12 tarp, but any size tarp will work. You can buy them real reasonable out of Walmart or just about anywhere. Make sure they got a lot of rings on so you can tie them down. You just string a rope up between 2 trees about as high as you can reach, and then use your ropes and bring them out and guide them down, tie them to other trees, or to stake them to the ground off long guy wires. And they come in, those campouts are real handy for when you set up with a nice starry Friday night and Saturday morning it's raining. That way you have some place to cook and clean up. Keep your fire just off of it a little bit so you can at least feel the warmth off your fire. You want to take with you nylon quarter rope. You don't want to get real big in diameter. 1/8-inch diameter nylon cord is fine. I use a lot of the sisal rope, 1/4 inch, about as small as we can get. Now this one, as you can see, this has an eye splice that we put into it. We made up some for our dining fly that we have, and we just put these over the top of it and then string it down, and at the bottom use a taut line and tie it off. I like to teach all my scouts that they don't need anything but the rope itself to whip the ends of it. This is a back splice, starts out with a crown knot, and then it's just woven down through. There's ways to whip the rope. The worst thing you want to do is take out your rope and find the end of it just all sprayed out everywhere. Then you've ruined your rope, at least that portion of it. And every time you use it, you've ruined it. So we've got into it where we show them how to splice two ropes together, the back splice and the eye splice. And it saves wear and tear if the end of it gets all boogered up, which it should never really, or part of the rope breaks and you just want to get rid of it. Just work down and back splice the rest of it again, and you've got your rope all ready to go. But you want, it says here 50 feet. I like to carry probably double that. We also carry a roll of twine with us. Twine can be used for just about anything you want. You use it to put up your extra guy lines for your tent during the wind. Just about a clothesline, the whole, you gotta watch. When you use twine, because it's treated and you hang a wet towel over it, especially a nice white one, you take it off, you're gonna have a yellow streak right down the middle of that towel. Because it'll soak up whatever the twine's treated with. But I like to use the sisal rope. Now, stoves and fuel. There's a multitude of ways to cook. You really don't need stoves and fuel unless you want to get into that. Right here's probably one of the best ways to cook is, I've got some of my stuff in the way. But you just buy a grate, they're not that expensive, and build your fire and use it for your heat source and your cooking source. The thing is though, on your fires, make sure that you soap the outsides of anything you put on there. It's a lot easier to clean up all your equipment. Use liquid soap, dish soap, and you just smear it all over the outsides as thick as you can get it. I like my boys to do that because that's the start of our cooking preparation. So I tell them to grease up all their pots and pans, put it on the fire, and then they got this soap all over their hands. So what do they have to do? They have to go wash out. So it helps in two ways. But up in the boundary waters, that's the way we had to cook. It was on open fires. They gave us a cook kit. They said they wanted it back in as good a shape as what they sent it off with us. So we made sure the boys soaked everything that was even going to get close to the fire. And it cleans them up real nice. Some people tell you, don't worry about your big water kettle because the blacker you get it, the quicker it's going to heat up. But it seems to me like I can never get all the black soot off of it, and every time I store it, I'd have black soot on it everywhere. So I went right back to cleaning everything up and making it nice and shiny. Now you want to take also, I take one with me all the time, is a camp saw. And on occasions we take an axe. If you want to do some fast cutting on the wood, this is the best way to do it. These aren't displayed properly, they should have a cover over the blade. There is another type of saw that's really nice, the Schwen saws that the blade folds up into the handle. It just makes a nice long stick that you can stick down in your backpack, and you've got your saw. But you can't split wood with these, so that's why we take an axe with us. And this isn't properly displayed. If you've ever been out with a group of boys and put the leather sheath over the end of it, the next thing you know, they've dropped it onto the end of it and split out the whole end of the sheath. At times we make up a block of wood and put over the ends of them with a strap that'll go around it. And they don't tend to, they split those out too, but they can drop them twice as many times before they do that. You notice I put a black rubber bumper on it. You'd be surprised when you're splitting wood how many times you miss that piece of wood and bust your handle. So if you put a rubber bumper on them and you go to split that piece of wood, it just bounces it a little bit and saves your handles. we can probably keep a handle twice as long. We put a rubber bumper on it. When you're out, though, as I mentioned before, when you're going to a place to camp, make sure you can have fires to start with. You go to a state park, you're not to take anything off the ground at all. You can't collect wood, you can't build a fire with it. It's all supposed to be left totally natural. And if they do catch it, they'll ask you to leave. Sometimes there could be, if you're really collected a bunch of it and making a nuisance yourself, they could fine you for it. But they want everything to stay as natural as it would be if no one had ever been there before. I recommend if you're going to do that, take your own firewood. Because you get to the state parks and they want a couple bucks for about 3 pieces of wood. And it's terrible the price you have to pay for firewood. So we usually load up a good load that we think is going to take us through the weekend. And sometimes we take too much, boys get carried away and lay like a bonfire at the end of the last night. So you got to kind of plan out how much you want to take and how much you want to haul back with you. But the other ways to cook, a little cleaner and a little more controlled, are your stoves. There are gobs of different types. This is a real old white gas stove. Now that's what I normally use, family camping or at Scouts. Get it open. But it's a 2-burner. I use a little bigger one than this. Here's your fuel tank with your generator. It turns around and hooks into your stove. Fill full of fuel, pump it up, go by the instructions. And normally I can cook for a whole day on this stove without having to refill it again. This isn't what you call a backpacking stove. This is the one where you're going to camp out of your trunk and you just pull it out. Walt, you want to go through what you brought?
This stove here is what you call a backpack. It's a white gas stove, and it's on the same principle as what Mark's is there, except that it does fold up just in your pack. I usually keep this in a cloth bag also to keep the soot and stuff off. It's sort of clean right now. But it is a little bit more cantankerous to use, and especially in cold weather, it starts a little hard. Then this stove is a good backpacking stove. It's what they call a cricket stove. It takes a tank of propane for the third leg, the other two, and as long as the tank is full, it'll burn this time of year. But in cold weather, why propane doesn't quite generate fast enough, but it is enough. You want to boil some water, if you want to make a can of soup or something like that, it's great for that. It's fit for your pack. Then of course, you got this, canned heat. You can buy this at the Walmart. Just take the top off and light it, heat your, whatever you want to do with it, put the top back on and save what's left. That's what I use for backpacking.
Also, on these, there is a multitude of varieties of stoves. As we found, Walt has the smaller stove. It's a Coleman. It seems like Coleman is the kind of the middle-class camping gear people. If you want something reasonable and it's good, Coleman's a good product to buy. They also make stoves that burn unleaded gasoline. They're called multi-fuel stoves. They can burn white gas or unleaded gasoline. The thing I don't like about the unleaded gasoline I found is if you get the wrong brand, it'll clog up your generator. That's the tube that once it's heated up makes the gas that burns in it. And once it's clogged up, you got to buy a new generator, and you're done. So I stay strictly with white gas or the propane, and it does real well. And you can backpack both of those real reasonable. Camp shovel. Walt mentioned before, he showed you the camp shovel. Now, there's places you use the camp shovel and places you don't. You don't want to be digging around if you're camping in state parks. Yeah, mine's dirty. But we like the military camp shells. Most of them have a pick on one side of them and a shovel on the other, and this one's all nice and rusted up. But it swivels here, and then the blades fold back, and then you lock it down with the swivel again. And we use them for making grease pits. Grease pit is just a hole dug in the ground with some grass and sticks over the top of it, and you strain any grease that you have into that hole. And you want to do this preferably about 200 feet away from any stream or river, anything you have that you'd pour into a dish soap, that kind of stuff. You want to keep that kind of materials away from your streams and rivers and ponds. But then this is also used when you're out and you have no facilities to make a latrine. You dig your little latrine trench and lash up your little latrine seat and the little holder for your toilet paper, and keep your shovel by it to fill in every time you've used it. Mostly with the new tents, it used to be that you trench around your tent during a rainstorm. But most places don't like you to dig anywhere around your campground. But they're handy too for your fire. Scooping up all your coals, getting it all ready to either put it out, or sometimes a log will just roll out of your fire. Camp shovel works real well just to scoop underneath and set it right on your fire.
And for Dutch oven cooking, it's an absolute necessity.
Right.
We'll talk about that in session 4.
If you forgot your tongs. Right. Now, cook kits. When the wife and I were doing that, she would get out her 2 big boxes and throw in all the pots and the pans and the coffee pot and all that stuff. And I said, you know, gosh, I'm in Scouts and we use cook kits all the time. Why don't we just go ahead and purchase a cook kit? And that's what we use now. You can use pots and pans and stuff you've got at home. Cook kits that buy through the Scouts run $55 to $60. So you're getting expensive a little better sometimes, just when you're starting out, to gather up, you know, a frying pan and a pot to boil water in, and just go out and try it and see how you do cooking. And then you can work your way up to some of the other stuff. But I wanted to show you cook kit. Whoa. Also nice, you notice I got it in a box. It's handy to have a little camp box. This one's made out of aluminum, real lightweight, but then they get a little expensive. And the wife thought that would be neat to go ahead, and it has been handy, of course, to carry around her stuff. Right now we're working on a big camp box. We have to walk in and out a lot of times into some camping areas. I bought a garden cart, 2 feet by 3 feet by 1.5 feet deep. And on top of it, build a camp box that's 2 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet high. And it's got doors on it, it's got a little shelf to put the camp stove on it, got a place to put my water jug, and all the little camping items that you might come up with. That's an extra that once you get into it and you think you want to put all your gear in one little area, the best way to do it is to make up your own. Design one that fits for you, that'll fit in your trunk or into a trailer you might be pulling or whatever. And you pull it out, put it on your picnic table, it's got everything in it, and you're ready to go. But most cook kits are just big versions of the littler cook kits we showed you. Most of those frying pan for the lid. Here's what I was talking about, aluminum. They're coming out with some now have Teflon coated. Much easier to use. I don't know how many times I've burnt stuff at the bottom of this. But like I said before, if you use a fire, soap up the bottoms of even your frying pan and your big water pot or anything you put on the fire. But these come with a nice coffee pot. There's some different variable size pots. They're in here with handles that go on the frying pan. And they make them now to where they stack up real nice. This is a 4-person cook kit. And you've got your cups in on the inside of your coffee pot. Covers the bottom of your 4 plates. And you've got just about everything you need to do any kind of cooking all in one nice little container. Hit her shovel back. Now your cleanup kit. Once you get everything all nice and messy, you want to clean it up. I just brought the bare essentials that we use. And just a plastic wash tub. Use the big pot to heat your water in until it clear up. Heat it, pour half of it into here, and then cool it off with some colder water out of your canteen or your water jug. But washcloths, scrubber pads, definitely a heat pad. That will actually pick up a log and put it on fire too. So. And SOS pads, use a lot of those. And a spatula and a ladle. And I also have here, the Scouts actually put up the best, what they call chef trail kit that I've seen. It's got everything you need. This one's been abused a little bit. For some reason it has 2 forks in it instead of the knife that's supposed to be in there. But it gives you your spatula, can opener, ladle, and a fork. Should be a big knife, and then there's a paring knife. And everything's in there you need to prepare your food with. And it all wraps up into a nice little bundle, and you just throw it in your camp box and you're done with it. Now, I found those when I'm camping with the family. I'm not so worried about how we clean up. Somehow the roles get reversed when we go camping. At home, the wife cooks and I throw the stuff in the dishwasher. We go camping, I get to cook and she does the cleanup. So we never worry too much about trying to sanitize stuff. But when you're out and sometimes you don't think you're going to get as quite as clean as you want, take a little bottle of bleach with you. And in your rinse water, just put a little cap full of bleach in your rinse water. That'll help sanitize. Because you don't want to be out in a couple days having intestinal problems and having to stop, every hour to take care of yourself. And also, one of the most important parts is you want to take a roll of toilet paper. And even take that with you in your rucksack when you're out hiking. You never know when nature calls. Also, this doubles as a great raccoon. It's a turkey run with my Scouts, and that night the raccoons decided to come in and do a little raid, and the boys were chasing them around a little bit. It was getting late, so I said, okay, let's go to bed. One boy just happened to be a loner, didn't have a buddy. He was the odd man out, he slept by himself. Crawls in, everybody is nice and quiet. He starts screaming, "Raccoon in my tent." And just went nuts, just screaming. And a couple boys got out and I got out and we went over to check and made him get out and drug it out. He left his roll of toilet paper under his feet and he swore that was a raccoon. Now, a repair kit. Some people go, oh, I'm only going for a weekend. I won't need anything to fix any rips or tears or lost buttons. But it's sure convenient just to have a little repair kit. Just needles and threads with some spare buttons in it. You can buy them, at any 5 and dime. And that nice shirt you had that you want to wear, that you got a little rip in, or the button fell off of it, especially right here where your gut sticks out. And you just use it and put your buttons back on. Repair any of your equipment you might have, even a nice little rip in your tent. You could, a quick repair, maybe not permanent, but sure better than having nothing at all with a big tear. And extras you might want to take along would be your grill. You'll find if you really get into camping and you start doing some of this stuff, you'll think of extras, or you'll see somebody that's camping that's got something neat. We make up poles that we put in the ground, and we take our Coleman lanterns with us. And we just push them in the ground. They got a little hook that hangs out, and you just hang your Coleman lantern on. And I've seen some that have tripods but they've either bought or made to go over the fire and hang a pot from it and have stew or chili, or use it just to heat up water and have hot water all day. There's all kinds of steel rods you can make up that swing in and out to hang your pots on while you're cooking. Just a multitude of things. And as I said before, the axe. Just for safety reasons, I hardly ever take an axe out. And on the front of your sheet, there's an outdoor code that is used in the Boy Scout handbook, and I like it. It's real simple, and it lets you know how you should really act when you're out in the outdoors. It says, as an American, I will do my best to be clean in my outdoor manners. Now that doesn't mean not only throwing your trash around your campsite, but that also means all the rest of your manners should be clean. Your language, there's nothing more irritating than to be out, especially with your family, and listen to a few people that have had too much to drink, getting rather rowdy with their language. Be careful with fires, that's self-explanatory. When you build fires, especially around your tent, you want to keep at least 10 feet away from your tent. Be considerate in the outdoors. That there again is self-explanatory. And also be conservation-minded. That's why the state parks don't like you to pick up stuff. They want to keep it as pristine and natural as if man had never been there before. When you're out hiking, what they call switchback, when you go up a mountain, and you really want to stay on the trails. Anytime there's a marked trail, you want to stay on it. There's a reason for a trail being there. If everybody just headed off and hiked through the woods, you'd have trails everywhere. And especially the hiking boots tend to really tear up the ground, especially when you're going up or downhill. There was a big movement several years ago about what to do with real knobby hiking shoes, because they were tearing up hiking trails real bad. But you know, it's like ripping branches off of trees. You never want to cut a live tree. Take whatever you can find off the ground, especially those places where you got a private campground. They'll let you do some of that stuff, or a wilderness area. Just treat it like you would anything that you have at home that's of value to you. Now, keeping clean, I mentioned this before. We like to do a lot of state park camping because their facilities are so nice. Nice heated showers. Everywhere you go, you got potable water. And it's always nice, you know, at the end of a nice long hike, to go in and take a shower and refresh yourself at the end of the day. There's sometimes been on long-term camping one week where you just were able to take spit baths, just out of a little pot of water. It wasn't available to take a shower, a nice hot shower. But try to keep things, your area and you as clean as you can. You're going to get dirty when you're outside, you know that, but there's ways to keep as clean as possible. I have one boy, I don't know how he does it, he's at a camp out the first 5 minutes, and I can't tell what color he's been. He's got dirt and grass and everything else all over him, and it's just unbelievable. And as I mentioned before, anytime you want to get rid of wastewater, try to keep it as far away from streams and lakes as possible. I know that when I first had the family out and had some of my kids cleaning up, all of a sudden there was a mud hole around the picnic table where they were cleaning up because they'd splashed water and done everything else to it. Well, then they tracked it everywhere. So now you got a nice mud hole going where they can track it just about any place. Think of in the tent, out of the tent, and all around, and you step in it. Think about how you're going to set up your camp and how to clean up. Like I said before, though, most times you're gonna have nice restrooms to go to. There are times that you're gonna have to build a latrine if you want one. Preferable that you do, so you do bury your waste product and you don't leave toilet paper and all that laying all over the ground. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give it back to Walt to go through some of the trail camping.
That's one of the best show and tell I've seen in years. You're on a roll, I hate this stuff.
Oh,
My part of it is backpack and trail camping. The first thing you want to do if you haven't had a physical within the last year, or get a physical from your doctor, because it can be pretty hard on a person. Next thing you want to do is exercise. Start walking, because you're going to be on the trail, you're going to be the transportation. What Mark has here is heavyweight camping. Usually that's by automobile or by pickup truck, sometimes by horse. But for trail packing, you are the transportation. So you start walking to get your right muscles in condition. Don't break in a pair of new boots actually on the trail. You break them in when you're taking your walking exercise. Slow and sure, so you get them where your feet aren't full of blisters. Now you walk, then you start increasing your weight. If you have to carry a bag of sand, a couple of bags of canned goods, as you walk, increase it gradually until you find a weight that you can comfortably carry 4, 5, 6 miles a day if you're going to go on a long trail. But you don't want to overload yourself to begin with, because then your first trail pack camping will be your last one. You'll say you'll never go again. Where to go? Well, Mark has already mentioned state parks, national forests, state forests. A lot of them are set up for trail camping. A lot of them have campsites along these trails, and some of them insist that you camp in those campsites. Some have shelters at the campsites, and some have firewood at the campsites. But don't expect them, so like Mark says, be prepared. You carry your own, instead of a tent, I like to carry a trail tarp, which is like Mark's dining fly. It's just a plastic tarp. An 8x10 is fine, a 10x10 is even better. But they're light and they're very waterproof. You make an A-frame tent out of it, or if you're on the pack and if you're on the trail and the downpour hits, you can rig yourself up a temporary shelter. And if the rain lasts more than an hour or so, you can build a fire under it and cook under it, which you can't do in a tent. The next thing you do is, after you decide where you're going to go, is to research it. By researching, I mean you get maps from the area. You contact the Department of Natural Resources, and they usually have maps of your parks, of your state forests that you can get from them, or you can even get a terrain map from the DNR. It tells you whether it's going to be flat or hilly or whatever, because you don't get a surprise out in the middle of nowhere where you find out you've got about a 400-foot cliff to climb up and you're carrying a 30-pound pack. And I say 30-pound pack because you want to keep your weight down. You're the transportation. You're the one's going to carry it. Your feet has to stand up under it, and so this kind of stuff is fine if you got a car to get you there. But like I say, I use a rucksack and keep it light, because that darn thing, and start off with 30 pounds, you swear it weighs 300 by the time you get to the first campsite. Your 4 basic needs on your camping, any camping, especially trail camping, is food, shelter, fire, and water. Not necessarily in that order, but a lot of it will depend upon what the season of the year is that you're going to do your camping. In the winter and cold weather camping, you want high energy food, which is sweets, high in oil content, something that you can cook on a small backpack stove, because you won't have time to build a bonfire in the middle of the day, and by the time you get it going, you don't want to move again. So the season of the year that you go will be dependent on what you have to have. Your spring and fall, your clothing, your type of shelter, your type of food is just about the same. Your summer is completely different. Your lighter tent or tarp, lighter weight clothing, mosquito dope, lots of insect repellent. In wintertime, it's completely different. You have to have your layers of clothes, like Mark had mentioned. Heavier sleeping bag. Your trail tarp is still okay, but your shoes, your boots, change from your hiking boots to your insulated boots like Mark has there. But you've got to have your body in shape for it. Otherwise, you're going to wake up and say, what am I doing here? And you don't know what you're doing there because you're in misery. So you might as well go with it with the right attitude, that you're going to have a good time, because you can have a good time. Like Mark says, you get out by yourself and away from everything, and then you realize just how small you are, because maybe you're 30 miles from anywhere and you're the only one that can get you out of it. Before you start out on any kind of a trail like that, though, make sure that someone knows when you're going and when your estimated time of getting back. Otherwise, you can be lost out there for a week and no one knows it but you. Your special gear, Mark has already covered all of that. The only thing I might add to it would be that 50-foot of nylon rope. You definitely need it, especially if you're any place around with a lot of raccoons or larger animals, and you have a bear bag. You swing it up in the tree about 50 feet from where your camp at, because they have been known to get in a lot of things. I heard rumors of them up there in that north country, but we didn't actually see one. We heard one snuff, and I swear it was a bear, but it could have been a chipmunk. At night, everything sounds a lot louder. The only other thing I have is the water, and you usually carry that with you, because on the Bounty waters, we didn't go on the same trip that Mark took, but we boiled our water because the first day out, the first thing we saw was a big beaver lodge. And so right away I kept thinking beaver fever. Now they say, well, you go out in the middle of the lake and you can dip your water out. Well, that might be true, but we still boil it first. And so, I don't know, did you boil yours, Mark?
We did the first couple of days, and then it was so hot. I'll explain that later.
But you can get chemical, they used to call them Helozone tablets. I don't know what they call them now. But you can treat your water chemically, and that'll also get rid of the parasites that cause that beaver fever. I imagine Doc can tell you the good name of it.
Giardia.
Okay, thank you. One more story about Doc. I probably told him before, he might remember it, but when we used to take the troop down to Querry camp, the troop got their camping down in Indian Village. Now that was right down on the banks of the Wildcat, and it was about 200 or 300 foot down this bank. And every night, you wake up maybe 1 o'clock in the morning and you shine your flashlight around, all I saw was eyes. Raccoons like you wouldn't believe. And I don't know whether they ever did it or not, but the older scouts, their main time, and they always waited for Doc to come down and stay his night. They always were going to put a bag of potato chips under his cot with a trail leading up to it. I don't know if they ever did or not. But I thought, boy, that was really worth maybe I should stay there and do it. Anyway, you are your own transportation on trail camping. You've got to be in good physical condition, and you got to go with the idea that you're gonna have a real good time. But you won't have this kind of stuff, you'll be down to the summer and the spring, maybe 2 blankets, a light sleeping bag or a down sleeping bag for colder weather sleeping. And like I said, that gets awful hard when you start walking 5 miles with a 30-pound, 300-pound pack. You wanna go off this canoe now, Mark?
Okay.
We're running a little short on time here, so.
I'll be quick. There's actually 2 forms of canoeing. One would be down a river. Around Indiana, that's where most of us would go. And the other one would be across lakes. One thing we found as we've been doing this is on your river canoeing, took several scouts down the Missouri River, Tarp River in Missouri, and we found that using 5-gallon buckets was a real nice way to go. You take the garbage sack, you put it in, you line it, and tie it up on the inside. Normally we would double bag everything. One you use for your clothes. Another one you just cram your sleeping bag down into. And another one would be for food. On this trip, we were met a couple times down the river and our food was delivered to us. Most of it was trail food, dehydrated, where you just added boiled water to it and you had a nice meal. And there's a lot of varieties that you can choose from, and they're actually rather delicious. There's all kinds.
We'll be tasting some of those in session
Okay.
4.
Okay, I won't mention any of that. You guys will have to come to that one to learn more on those. But we found that by doing this on the river camping, if you happen to tip over, you didn't have your sleeping bag. Of course, normally you'd line your sleeping bag with plastic bags, but if you tipped over your backpack, and just soak up with water. We always make sure we tied all of our equipment down to our canoes. So if we ever did go over, nothing would sink to the bottom. Did find out that these would actually float if you had enough airspace in them. So if you did happen to lose one, it was great. Also, what's really nice about them is you don't have to take a camp chair with you. You've got your seat with you at all times. That was really what we found the handiest part of the whole thing. When we went on this trip, you start out the first day, it's run through the Boy Scout Council. It's a 60-mile trip. You do it in about 4 days on a Class 3 river, which means most of the rivers around here are slower moving, while Class 3 is your little quicker moving. Was it Class 1 river for around here? Is that the slow? Yeah, mainly. Maybe you get some toot every once in a while, but
The tipping canoe in April ain't too bad.
yeah, it depends on how much rain we get. But this is a nice Class 3 river, so it means you were going to hit some rapids. The first
Hell,
day,
the Iroquois in April ain't too bad.
yeah.
As long you know.
Dr. Ahler, he can tell you that story later. But the first day, they didn't let us take any gear with us because we started out the worst part of the river. And I just happened to be with another scout leader that had never been in a canoe before. And he was about my size. And put him in the front so I could steer in the back, kind of get us into the V's as we went into the rapids. And he invariably panicked. We swamped 6 times that day. So thank God we didn't have any kind of equipment with it at all. It was natural fed, spring fed river, and it was about 56, 60 degrees in the river the whole time. So when you went in, you had your breath out of you a couple times. But you could drink the water. Anytime you found a spring coming up, you could drink right out of the river without any problem. We spent 4 days on the river. We just would find places as we went along, and that's where we camped. We throw our tent up and get our gear out and dry off whatever we had. One mistake I found was I had forgot my second pair of shoes. So I wore wet shoes the whole time we were there. Whatever I could get them dried out that evening around the fire, or over my little camp stoves we used, and what Walt showed you, and just try to go on the next time. But it can be interesting, it can be fun. There's a nice Sugar Creek that goes down through Turkey Run and Shades. We've got some outfitters that'll give you a canoe and a paddle and set you off one place, pick you up the next. You want to try canoeing, it's a nice trip. You see a lot of different landscape. It's a beautiful place to go down and canoe. Or you can canoe around, we've actually canoed down the Iroquois. And there's several other rivers you can hit. The other type would be across lakes. That's one of the trips we took was to the Boundary Waters up Superior National Forest. And we spent 6 days there, did a 50-mile canoe trip. You do a lot of portages. We spent a lot of time. It seemed like on days that's all you did was portage. Some of the lakes you can spit across. So as soon as you load up all your gear and start across it, you'd have to unload and portage everything over again. What was nice, so they would furnish you everything except your personal clothes. They give you your tent, your sleeping bag, your mat, your food, your canoe, your tent. The places where you camped had grates already set up. And it's nice when you're in those areas, people will leave wood for you. They expect you then, when you leave, to leave a pile of wood. And I thought that was the neatest thing I'd ever run into. Come into the campsite, here's a nice pile of wood ready for you to cook. And all you do then is leave, replenish the pile, and take off again the next day. Now in this area also, as I mentioned before, was group sizes. You're restricted to 9 people. And then they also restrict the number of total people that can be up in an area. They only have so many permits that you have to obtain. And in my group, I had 8 boys and myself. 2 of the older boys were junior assistants that I took along. The other group had 8 in their group, 2 adults, and the rest of them boys. We played it out to where they would camp, we'd go past them, wave, say everything was okay, and then we'd go to the next campsite. You could be fined heavily if you were caught all together in one group. It's $100 a leader plus another $10 for every boy, plus you're thrown out of the place. So it could get expensive. But like Walt said, we had to hang bareback every night. Our group never saw one, never heard one, and the other group, the way they described it, they definitely heard bear the first night they were out. We saw everything except bear, which we were happy. So I had deer walk right into our campsite. As we were leaving, sitting at our canoes, a doe came right down into our campsite and was going right down to the water. Had eagles come in off the fish scraps that we left off for them. Saw otters, moose. It's nice when you're up there. Their latrines are a molded fiberglass stool that sits right on top of a hole, and that's it. You walk down the trail and there it sits, out in front of God and everybody. So that was my usually early morning constitution. Grab a book, go up to the latrine, and that's where I saw most of my wildlife, was sitting there meditating. But you have some good times when you're out camping. Probably some of my most memorable experiences are along with camping with my family and scouts. Places we've been, the things we've seen, and at a real reasonable price. We go up every year to Minnesota, to northern Minnesota, to a lodge, and we rent a camping spot for a week, sometimes 2. We can do it for the whole week, including buying our bait and fishing, the whole works for $300 for the whole family, and we tent camp. The only thing the wife doesn't like is every time we've been there, they've either saw a bear or a bear has been through the camp. So that's all she thinks about all week. I can tell her she'll do it. I'm going to let Walt finish up real quick. He's got 1 minute to do no trace. Well, we started 5 minutes late. Can we run 5 minutes over?
The only thing I have to add to this canoe story, that I was up there this last year, and the day that my son and I left, a history teacher from Kansas had come 900 miles. He had 73 elementary age students with him. 40 girls and 33 boys. He also had 10 adults, and I thought, what in the world is that man out of his head? And he said, this is the 15th year that he had been up to this outdoor adventure camp. And he had always brought this group of elementary students. They come 900 miles each way to get up there to Ely and take that trip. So what Mark and I have done isn't anything at all fantastic. That guy is fantastic.
Well, one thing we found too, we made the comment because of what we saw up there in the Boundary Waters. I saw a canoe with mom and dad in the front and back, all the gear in the middle, and 3 kids stuck in it. And they were doing the Boundary Waters. And saw couples, retired couples, out there doing the same thing. You put your backpack on, they give you a 50-pound canoe, you throw it on your shoulders and you walk, your portages, and you just dump them down and go again. Every age group was there. The oldest they had out of our camp that had went at one time was 9 years old. And they had got a couple take their 8-month-old baby with them on one. So camping's not hard. Anybody can do it.
Sometimes it's misleading because the outfitter that we went out on said the worst thing he has is the women that come in. In fact, he had to go pick one woman up because she had got to the second campsite and she just refused to go any farther. She was not going to carry any more gear across portages, and she wasn't going to help carry a canoe. So her husband went off and left her, and they had to go out and get her. But you make it.
Thank you all for coming.
Next week we'll explore the rules of fishing, and we'll hear some tall fish stories. I want to leave you with one camping story. I sat over there and laughed, thinking a million stories to tell. There was a guy by the name of Ray Carter who always used to come bring some donuts for our boys when they would be camping. One night he brought some donuts, and it was a warm summer night, and the boys begged and said, oh, can we just please sleep out and not sleep in our tents? They slept around the big campfire, and they all fell asleep and scattered over the ground with these damn donuts. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, a mother skunk and her 9 babies. And we woke up horrified that here's 10, 15 boys out there, unconscious, and these skunks walking through them, eating the donuts. All the donuts got ate, not one of the boys got sprayed. Nobody remembered any skunks except us horrified readers watching from afar. We shook our head. There's a million stories. Camping is fun. We'll see you next week.